Hello everyone. In this particular video, we will be discussing about few important terminologies for statistics. So, we will be discussing about the p-value, level of significance, that is alpha, and the confidence interval. These terms are very commonly used while doing the hypothesis testing. Now, let us start with p-value. As we have discussed in the previous tutorial, to perform hypothesis testing, we first define the null hypothesis and the alternate hypothesis. Then, in order to decide if we want to accept the null hypothesis or reject the null hypothesis, we perform different tests on our dataset. One type of test that we have already seen is z-test. Then after performing the z-test, we'll be getting our z-score. Based on the z-score, we will calculate the p-value. We have already seen how to calculate the p-value using the z-score in our tutorial for z-score. Based on this p-value, we get an idea about how significant our assumption for null hypothesis is. So, a p-value is a measure of probability that an observed difference could have occurred just by the random chance. Now let us consider, in this case, I got my p-value as 0.05. This means that if we do statistical tests n times, only 5% of the times we will get something other than the null hypothesis. So in this case, 5% of the times we will be getting something other than the null hypothesis. That is, we might land up into the alternate hypothesis, but 95% of the times we'll be getting the null hypothesis. So this is what a p-value tells us. So smaller the p-value, better are the chances of rejecting the null hypothesis. So this was about p-value. Now let us see what do we mean by level of significance. First of all, level of significance is denoted by the symbol alpha. By definition, the alpha value or the level of significance or the confidence level is a criteria for determining whether a test statistic is statistically significant or not. In other words, the level of significance tells us how confident you are on the results of hypothesis testing. This is the metric with which we will compare our calculated p-value and decide whether we need to accept or reject the null hypothesis. As we have seen in the previous case, while doing the hypothesis testing, we performed different tests, and based on the test results, we calculate the p-value. P-value tells us how significant our assumption was. Now we have to make our decision that we need to accept the null hypothesis or reject the null hypothesis. To make this decision, alpha, that is the level of significance, comes into picture. What we do is we compare the p-value with the level of significance. If my p-value is smaller than the level of significance, what I do is I reject the null hypothesis. But if my p-value is greater than the level of significance, I accept the null hypothesis. Therefore, level of significance is a metric with which we will compare our calculated p-value and decide whether we are accepting or rejecting the null hypothesis. Again, the standard level of significance that we use are either 0.01, which indicates a 99% level of significance. Again, the alpha value can be 0.05, which indicates 95% significance, and 0.10, which indicates a 90% level of significance. Now let us see another important parameter, that is the confidence interval. So confidence interval is a range of values in which we are fairly confident that our true value will lie in. So it is the actual upper and lower bound of the estimate you expect to find at a given level of confidence. Suppose we are considering a 95% confidence level. At this level, we define a lower limit and an upper limit. After defining these limits, I can say that 95% of the data points or 95% of the observations will lie within this lower limit and upper limit. Within this confidence interval, 95% of the observations will lie. So, 95% confidence interval means that there is a 95% chance that the true value is within the range. This is the formula to calculate the confidence interval. In this formula, this term defines the margin of error. So, the lower limit or the lower bound is given by mean minus the margin of error, and the upper bound is given by mean plus the margin of error. So in this formula, x bar is mean, z is the calculated z-score, s is the standard deviation, and n is number of data points or the number of observations. So this is how we calculate the confidence interval. So in this video, we first saw what is a p-value, then we saw the level of significance and how we can use this level of significance along with the p-value to make a decision upon the hypothesis, and then in the end, we discussed about the confidence interval. If you liked the video, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe the channel. Thank you.